In an ironic circle of influence, Jamaican reggae was played on African American radio stations in New York in the 1960s. DJs used rhymes to introduce reggae songs. These AM stations could be received in Jamaica, where listeners picked up on the DJ's rhyming styles, extending them over reggae songs to create dub, another forerunner of rap. Cool DJ Herc, before introducing his innovative turntable style, brought his dub style to New York, but it failed to gain popularity. He concentrated on developing his DJing skills, which later allowed for the acceptance of MCing and eventually rap. The development of rap and reggae has been an intertwined path of two different styles, which have grown from and have thrived in similar circumstances. Finally, just as reggae has been under attack for some artists, seeming advocacy of violence to solve social, political, and economic problems, rap has become the scapegoat of the American musical fabric, as it too has faced mass popularity and commercialization, just as reggae is now under threat of losing its power as an art form and a social voice after being appropriated by those outside of the Rastafarian culture. Rap struggles to survive adoption and commodification by those outside of the world of hip-hop. In the last decades, hip-hop music has followed the path of commercialization that destroyed African American radio stations in the 1970s, whereas prior to commercialization, African American owners, programmers, and DJs had the freedom to use their stations to serve the specific needs of their listeners. New York's working class African American community, they were able to promote local artists and events and to address news events and social concerns as members of the same community from which they drew their audience. However, as corporations owned by business people outside of the community consolidated power by purchasing local stations, African American AM stations were forced out of the market by more economically powerful stations owned and controlled mainly by members of the white upper class. African American DJs lost their power as the modern day griots of their communities and as the presenters of hip-hop music and culture. Similarly, with the discovery of hip-hop artists by corporate record labels, rap music was stolen from its community, repackaged by money-minded business people looking to create a wider appeal by erasing hip-hop's historic function, and sold back to the streets through marketing ploys such as music videos and top 40 charts. By the 1980s, hip-hop had become a business and rap music was a valuable commodity. However, according to journalist Christopher John Farley, rap's commodification has also disenfranchised it as a form of resistance. Corporate America's infatuation with rap has increased as the genre's political content has withered. Ice Cube's early songs attacked white racism. Ice-T sang a song about a cop killer. Public Enemy challenged listeners to fight the power, but many newer acts are focused almost entirely on pathologies, within the black community. They rap about shooting other blacks, but almost never about challenging governmental authority or encouraging social activism. Though not new themes, many of the aspects of rap that have been pointed out by politicians as objectionable, violence, misogyny, and homophobia in the lyrics, and lifestyles of some rappers may be seen as a function of rap's commodification. While rappers struggle to keep it real, a term which reminds those inside hip-hop to be true to their roots, some admit that many rappers do as their record labels wish. Simply, they write lyrics that sell in an audience which has become increasingly ethnically and proven profitable for young African American male artists that of the pimp, the gangster, and the player. According to African American musician Michael Franti, in order to be real, we don't all have to be the same. Through the commercialization of today's music, there is a lot of pressure for young black men to conform to very specific roles. The commodification of rap has allowed large paychecks and platinum records to erase the historical, social, and economic context out of which rap music has emerged from public consciousness. According to Davey D, the business of music has bastardized rap, from its roots as resistance against slavery to its connection to the reggae movement in Jamaica, to the appearance of rappers as modern-day griots. Rap has traditionally been the music of the subjugated African American working class. While it is important to celebrate hip-hop culture today as inclusive of vastly diverse ethnic and economic groups, it is equally important to recognize and preserve the function that rap has served for its original community. In order to understand the themes and forms of rap music, it is important to follow the history of African Americans from their beginnings in West Africa to their enslavement throughout the early history of the United States, to their struggles against racial prejudice and segregation after emancipation, to the continuing battles against de facto economic segregation and reclamation of cultural identity of many African Americans today. If rap music appears to be excessively violent when compared to country western or popular rock, it is because rap stems from a culture that has been seeped in the fight against political, social, and economic oppression. Despite the theatrics sometimes put on for major label albums or MTV videos at the time, for many artists, rapping about guns and gang life is a reflection of daily life in racially and economically stratified inner city ghettos and housing projects. Violence in rap is not an effective agent that threatens to harm America's youth. Rather, it is the outcry of an already existing problem from youth whose worldviews have been shaped by experiencing deep economic inequalities divided largely along racial lines. The nihilistic approach to violence and criminal activity for which rap music is often criticized is defended by some artists as the understandable result of disparities that face African American communities from which rap originated and remained rooted. America's most recent census reported that African American youth are the most likely group in the nation to live in poor households in neighborhoods, to be unemployed, to be the victims of homicide or AIDS, or to spend time in prison at some point in their lifetimes. According to Cornel West, a professor of religions and Afro-American studies at Harvard University, it's no accident that one would see various rap songs and various lyrics that revolve around death. Perhaps some of the popularity of the thug life celebrated in the gangster rap subgenre is the opportunity it may provide for economic and social power in neighborhoods where hope has been lost. For many poor inner city youth, the gun, which has had a central role in the lyrics of many gangster rappers, represents a way to empower oneself and gain respect within continuing cycles of racial and economic prejudice. Additionally, some rappers defend the presence of violence in their lyrics as the manifestation of American history and culture. Journalist Michael Saunders writes, "The violence and misogyny and lustful materialism that categorize some rap songs are as deeply American as the hokey music that rappers appropriate. The fact is, this country was in love with outlaws and crime and violence long before hip-hop. Specifically, the African American experience has been shaped by the legacies of slavery, segregation, and economic and political subjugation, and has been marked by institutions and incidents of violence." Rapper Chuck D thinks that much of the violence and nihilism in rap music is the legacy of the hate that minorities have faced in the United States. "We African Americans," he says, "were a product of what hate produced. We were taught to hate ourselves. So a lot of the conflict is breamed off of ignorance." In order to preserve rap's cultural function and simultaneously to promote artistic and commercial progress, the communities that traditionally been the ones making the music should be the ones that control its production and distribution. Hip-hop, including its history, its forms, and its social importance, should be taught in school music curriculum alongside classical music, folk music, and jazz. The inclusion of rap in music education programs may also allow students and teachers to have an open discourse on related issues, such as the relationship between rap music and gangs, the presence of violence, misogyny, and homophobia in some rap songs, and the debate over musical rating and adversary systems. Additionally, rap could be integrated into English and language arts curriculum as a form of both poetry and drama. Allowing students to write and perform their own rap encourages them to think critically, to practice writing in the narrative form, to increase vocabulary, and to develop an understanding of rhyme and rhythm. In order to understand hip-hop, it is necessary to look at it as the product of a set of historical, political, and economic circumstances, and to study the role it has served as voice for those subjugated by systematic political and economic oppression. With that being said, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. My name is Gary Harrison, And remember, stay humble and stay hungry. And I'll catch you on the next one.